You're listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, we'd love it if you could leave us a rating and some feedback wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you get the idea. This is episode 62, where we talk about the benefits of taking an AR-15 class and finding new excitement in your firearms journey while branching out into a new discipline. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy episode 62 of Range Minded, the basic AR-15 class. Hello and welcome to another episode of Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting.
Yeah.
My name is Mark Long, and I am joined, as always, by
the one and only Steve Zimmerman,
who I did have the pleasure of seeing in person this weekend.
Yeah, I apologize that you had to see me this weekend, but I was there.
You were there. Well, it was a big deal happening at Independence this past weekend.
Yeah, so I guess this will air a week later, right? So let's see, when is this going to air? I don't even know.
Today.
Oh, it's going to air today. So yesterday, You guys totally missed out yesterday because we had our 2-year anniversary at the range, and there was hot dogs and hamburgers and crazy sales on guns and all sorts of stuff. It was amazing.
It was pretty busy, too. It was probably the most busy I've ever seen the store.
Yeah, it was stupid busy.
Yeah, you were. I walked in and you were running between a couple different people selling guns and stuff.
Yeah, I was doing like 2 or 3 gun sales at a time, like trying to keep up with people. It was chaos, but it was a good chaos, right?
Yeah, and the ranges were full. I mean, even in when I was in there, I had to share the range with some people during my AR-15 class that I took.
Yeah. Oh, and how was that?
It was fantastic, and actually, that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So, but not before we get to a little bit of current events, because we haven't done that in a while, and figured that'd be good.
There's some interesting things happening.
Yeah, and I thought it'd be a good way to start.
Yeah, we can jump right into it if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I mentioned to you, was it yesterday I was telling you about this?
Yeah.
So, and maybe some of our listeners have already heard this, but the ATF, the bastions of firearms law, the ones that command respect and tell us how we need to store and keep our firearms safe from unwanted users,
right,
has lost some guns.
How many guns have they lost?
So we might be thinking maybe 1 or 2 or nope. So they have this facility in West Virginia. I can't remember what the name of the facility exactly is here. It's just kind of screaming through one of the reports. But anyway, what it is when they confiscate a gun or when they change their duty guns out or whatever, these firearms go to this facility in West Virginia. Well, they had, in the first report I read, and there are some very conflicting numbers. The first report said there were thousands of firearms and parts missing.
Thousands of firearms missing.
But if you read one of the more lefty reports, which is what I have pulled up right now, it just says hundreds.
Really?
So you can guess. I'm guessing it's probably closer to thousands if it's a big facility like that just destroys firearms.
Thousands and thousands of guns.
And they did some investigating. Obviously, they better be doing it. They put their thumb down on the regular citizen. They should be doing some investigating on their own. But by the way, I like the ATF. I don't need them to come visit me. They're fantastic. Actually, our local agent guys are studs. They are actually really cool, non-stereotypical ATF agents.
Well, they're Idaho ATF. That's why.
But I digress. Right.
So
they decided to do some investigating, and they found out that what was this guy's name? So they had a contracted security guard that had been there for like 15 years. Had decided that he was going to make some side money, and he'd been stealing slides and parts. And in one of the reports I read last week, there might have been some fully automatic weapons that he may have sold under the radar. And so the guy's totally screwed, right? So I think it's
he's going to jail forever. Goodbye.
And I think there's some kind of federal statute where he can't serve, more than so many years, but I think it's like 10 years or 100 years per infraction. It's something ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, the guy's totally done.
Yeah, that's especially if you over the course of 15 years you've done that, and how many counts you're going to have. I mean, that's probably life in prison. So,
and I bet it is completely like there's no way they could put a number on exactly what he did. Like, there's no way.
No, there's no way. He probably doesn't even know how many
No.
guns he sold or how much money he made.
No, and you'd think maybe if he pulls up in a BMW or something, maybe it would kind of know. But anyway,
maybe.
But yeah, so there's a problem, right? Big problem.
That's a big problem. Where did all those guns go?
Especially restricted items like fully autos.
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
and stuff it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was, like you said, if it's a police issue or FBI issue stuff, and then there are full autos in there, SBRs, and all the accessories and stuff that goes with it.
There's probably suppressors mixed in there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Great job keeping your safe locked, ATF.
So my question is, why, if it's like a destruction facility, why aren't they just immediately destroyed?
That would be a really good question, and I'm sure we'll never get that answer. Actually, and it might even be the West Virginian. Let me scroll up here. There's a congressman that's like super pissed. What's his name? Oh, Senator Johnson. West Virginia Senator John. Like, he is furious, and he wants answers. And the ATF,
I'm sure.
They've been dodging questions. Like, they haven't really reported anything to Congress about what's been going on. They've been kind of tight-lipped.
They just say, "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah, pretty interesting. And
wow. And
I off the air, I was telling you, I just spent a few minutes doing some investigative work. You would think this would be an anomaly, right? This wouldn't have happened before.
No, but
so on a super short, quick investigative review on Facebook, of all places. I did a Google and a Facebook search. So the first one was Google, and lo and behold, this article is from 2018.
Last year. From
the Daily Caller. 23 firearms issued to ATF agents had been lost. Unaccountable. They don't know where they went. They were lost.
I think I remember that story because they were all full autos, weren't they?
I didn't read all the way through it. Most of them were issued guns, looks like. But there were agents that had gone and partied with their firearm, which becoming, at least in the state of Idaho, it's not illegal to take a gun into a bar, but it is illegal to drink while you're carrying a firearm.
Yeah, you have to have a 0.0 to be carrying, I believe.
So look at that. I mean, I'm guessing other states have some kind of a statute.
Sure. And they're probably law enforcement, so it's different.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right. But nonetheless, there was one agent.
Or federal law enforcement, I guess.
Yeah, they're special. But yeah, so they had partied, and when he came to the next morning, he couldn't find his duty gun. They never found it.
Was it a handgun?
I'm guessing it was one of their Glocks.
Sure. Yeah, because I didn't know if it was. I seem to remember a story about somebody stealing around the same amount of full auto ARs from like the ATF or FBI or something like that as well from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
Well, that's why it's important to store your firearms, because they can disappear just like that.
Yeah. In fact, that wasn't the first time either in 2018.
The hits just keep on coming.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So here's this one, and this was in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Agents have lost agents have lost track of dozens of government-issued firearms, including their own issued firearms that they threw under the seats of their cars, or, that had been stolen out of their vehicles or whatever. And these two kids in 2009, two 6-year-old boys, found an ATF-issued firearm in a storm drain, loaded.
Oh, my God. Well, you just got to run and you throw it down there. You're going to come pick it up later?
I don't know.
Man,
isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. I mean, I've got a fair collection of firearms. I don't have thousands or hundreds or anything like that, but I at least know where they all are at any given time.
Yes.
If you ask me where a specific one was. Now, granted, that doesn't mean that I don't forget that I have one every once in a while.
And I understand the amount of firearms that they seize. It's I'm sure it's a ridiculously huge number, and one that would make any collector jealous, right?
Oh, I bet, yeah.
But it's a government agency demanding us to follow certain rules about not letting unauthorized users obtain a firearm, and they're not doing it.
Right, and there are even some states that, or some countries like Australia, remember, with Australian Chris, he said that there's, safe storage laws that, they'll come check and they'll bust you on every once in a while if you're not compliant.
Yeah. Well, there's some states like that too. Like I think New York has the lockup state or lockup law where you can be searched anytime, and if your firearm is not in the safe, you're done.
Yeah. And goodbye guns. But and even with that, like, I don't know how you don't know where your guns are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially as a government agent, if you get something issued, like you go and, you have to check it in and out of inventory, or don't people check to make sure that you have it or don't have it, or if it's in working order? Isn't there like an armorer and like, like at least in...
That's the way local police agencies work. You show up to work.
Exactly.
The firearm's issued. It's checked out. It's checked back in when your shift's over. I guess not with the feds. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's different with them, or maybe, let's say you lose a firearm a year ago and maybe you have to qualify with that firearm at some point. Well, it's pretty hard to qualify with it if you don't have it, and somebody's got to know at one point or another,
Yeah, it's ridiculous. In fact, in one of these articles I was reading, and it might even be this one, that at one point the ATF had their minimum penalty or whatever for their agents for losing losing a firearm was 3 days suspension.
That's it.
And during this one interval where they were losing lots of guns, it's right here. In 2007, the ATF cuts its minimum suspension for first time loss of a weapon from 3 unpaid days to 1.
So you're suspended for 1 day and you come back the next day like nothing happened?
Oh, you lost government property. Take a day off.
No, you lost a full auto. No, that's okay. We'll just you're not going to pay you for it, but we'll just take a day off and we'll go from there.
That's ridiculous.
That's crazy, man. I mean, especially because, obviously that guy selling them out of the warehouse or whatever, those aren't being sold to lawful gun owners, I imagine.
There's no way. Like, he couldn't have taken it to a dealer and be like, hey, I'm going to sell this. Can I trade this in to buy another gun? That was not going to happen, especially if it's a controlled firearm.
Yeah, you can't. Obviously there are a lot of laws when it comes to selling NFA firearms and full autos and stuff.
Yeah, it would have been a mile worth of paperwork and months of transferring it over. So,
and he would have had to have his own forms showing that he, owned it legally and all that kind of stuff.
Or at least an FFL of his own.
Something like that, but still, there's usually a paper trail you can follow.
So, yeah, I think your hunch would be right that it's not quite going to the most upstanding citizen in the state.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. It's just, it's all those gun laws aren't really helping to do that.
Yeah.
Or to curb that, huh?
I just thought it was kind of interesting. Thanks, ATF.
Thanks for setting a good example.
But don't worry, all my guns are accounted for and locked up. And I don't even like to sell guns. I only buy guns legally. So
yeah, I don't like to sell them either. I just keep them.
The ones that I used to own, they were all lost in a boating accident.
Right, so they're useless now.
Everybody knows about my luck on the water.
Yep, down at the bottom of the lake now. Can't get them.
That's why I could never join the Navy.
Maybe that's why where all the ATF guns go too. Maybe that's where that originated.
Probably.
Maybe they had their own boating accidents.
That's ridiculous.
Well, anyway, that's the, there's more crazy stuff going on, but that's all we'll cover, I think, with current events now.
There's a plethora of stuff going on. And if you guys hear of anything or you want us to do some research on some stuff, not that we have like these unlimited resources, but we do have some avenues and some information that maybe, the normal Joe off the street can't get. So let us know if you want us to look at.
You mean we don't have a crack research team ready to go at all times?
We are the crack research team, my friend.
Yeah, you're hearing them right now. But we were going to talk about the basic AR-15 class that I took this past weekend, yesterday, in fact, when I did see you at the store.
And I was really jealous, actually. I wanted to go out there with you.
Man, it was great. It was a fun time. obviously with shooting, pistols a lot. I've had a fair amount of experience in training doing that now, between taking the intermediate class twice and the enhanced concealed carry class and the advanced class. Which, and we've gone over in previous episodes why you'd maybe want to take a class twice, or maybe you'd want to, continue your education past the basic class, and, the dividends that pays. But for this, I know how to build ARs. I know how they work. I've shot, mine a few times, but I never really had the opportunity to get some training on it. So I thought the time was perfect to do it.
Was there something that you expected going into the class? Like, was there something that you knew was going to happen? And then was there something that you were completely surprised that happened?
A little bit. I knew we were probably going to go over the basics of it, and, obviously shoot some rounds and go over the basics, that we do in handgun classes, like stance and grip, and, how to manipulate the firearm, and the manual of arms and all that. But what really surprised me was that we actually took our own guns and broke them down, and took the bolt carrier group out, and broke that down into even its smaller pieces. And, both Leroy and John were there to explain, how it works and how all these things fit together, and why they all fit together. And most of the time in the classroom portion, there aren't any guns present at all.
Right.
But this time we all had AR-15s to, in front of us to take apart and to examine, I suppose, ourselves.
And it's nice. I liked that it was your own guns. It wasn't like the store's guns or the instructor's guns. It was your own personal gun that they had you tear down and look at. I think that's awesome.
Right. But, well, it's funny you mentioned that, because mine was my own gun, because I've built in an AR or two here and there. But the other three folks in the class actually did not have their own ARs, so they borrowed them from the store. Yeah. But I liked that, obviously we have a couple of ARs to spare, so people can attend the class. That way you don't have to get into building or buying a whole AR just to take a class. Right. You can find out if you like the platform or the weapon system beforehand. But it was nice to be able to take apart my own gun, and see, all the pieces, how they fit together. And I can't take them apart or any blindfolded or anything. Like, I'm not like Cody or anything like that. But, I'm pretty familiar with how it all works.
You should be able to. What are you waiting for?
Well, we were talking about that in the class, and about how, soldiers and stuff out in the field can do it in the dark and replace all these parts and stuff like that in the dark, no problem. And it's impressive that they can do that, man. I don't know if I could be able to do that. I could, if I practiced it, maybe.
It would take a serious amount of time, I think.
Yeah, it would take some practice. And I think when you're in the military, it gets drilled into your brain, and you do it hundreds of thousands of times over and over again.
And then one more time after that,
just to make sure. But, and even though I know how the gun functions and how all the pieces fit together and how all the pieces work together to fire a projectile, you still get to learn a couple new things. I had never actually taken the time to see how the locking lugs actually fit together. And when you take the upper, apart, and you can look down in there and see the locking lugs twist and lock back together. And that's how it's all sealed up. To keep that explosion of powder, in that area.
Inside the chamber, yeah.
Yeah, inside the chamber, and why that's so important. And so that was kind of cool, just to be able to see it, in depth. And I was a little embarrassed with how dirty my gun was, but nobody said anything, thankfully.
It'll run.
Yeah, exactly. And it ran great. So we spent a lot of time. So it was a basic class, and I haven't taken a basic class in a while. So I had to kind of remind myself that we had to start from square one. We went over the history of the AR, and, like I said, all the nomenclature and stuff. And it's stuff I already knew, but I'm not going to be one of those guys where it's like, well, I already know all this.
Yeah, there's no point. I was worried. Yeah, so I was worried with John and Leroy, that more John than anything, because I haven't really sat in a class with John, that it might be a little bit more deeper than a basic. That was my fear.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I need to. Like I said, I wish I could have just snuck into that class and hung out.
Yeah. It was interesting too because I hadn't taken a class with John or Leroy before, and they actually taught it together. And so they were able to, say one thing one way or explain another part of it the other way. And they're kind of like, it was funny because I said, yeah, you guys compliment each other pretty well when you teach. And he goes, yeah, it's like Abbott and Costello over here. But people learn things different ways, or when you say something in other words, one person may get it that first time and a second person may get it the second time. So it's good to have those, multiple explanations, and they both come from law enforcement. Leroy has a military background a little bit more. And John, I think, is just law enforcement. And I put that in air quotes, just law enforcement, but he was SWAT team and all that kind of stuff. There may or may not
be a little bit more to his background.
Well, it's all serious stuff.
Yeah, nonetheless, it was a busy man.
Yeah. So it was cool to have those guys together to be able to answer questions and explain things in a different way if you needed it. And, using, drawing from their decades of experience about manual of arms and economy of motion and things like that.
Right.
It's interesting too. I think a lot of new people that are new to the gun world or new to shooting, whether it's handguns or ARs, they ask what's the right way to do this or the best way to do this. And, with shooting anything, there's multiple different ways of reloading a gun or shooting or, charging it or anything like that. And they just talk about whatever you do and that works, just do that consistently. We were talking about, the bolt holding open on the last round after the last round's been fired, and putting a fresh magazine in and how you check to make sure that magazine is seated. Some people just slam it up there and hope for the best. And Leroy goes, I slam it up there and then I actually pull down on it to make sure it's seated in there. And I thought that was a really smart but quick little movement to make sure that mag is seated properly. And then we talked about, the bolt catch you can push in to drive the bolt forward. And, they go, you can use your thumb or you can slam it. We were taught to slap it, but however you want to do it is fine, as long as you practice it consistently. And I think that's one thing that surprises new shooters, is that there isn't necessarily one way or the best way to do anything. It's all very dependent on, your body mechanics and, what fits and feels the most comfortable for you.
Yeah. And it is important, I think, too, to understand multiple ways to manipulate your gun in certain situations, because like I said, each gunfight's dynamic and or even match or whatever. It's going to be dynamic, and it's probably good to know more than one way to do something.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you're going to switch, maybe you're behind cover and you just switch sides or switch, stances or something like that. Or, from a kneeling position or from a standing or prone position, depending on what all that's going to be, you need to learn how to do those things in those positions too. Yeah, but we went over, we did start from square one, so it was a little slow for me at the beginning, but that was just because I, had already come in with some experience and with some knowledge already. But, the other folks, were very engaged in asking questions and all that kind of stuff about, about just the nomenclature and what piece functions where and really kind of in-depth stuff. You could tell that the folks that were in the class were really interested in what was going in learning about more. And that's always a good environment to be in too. So we did that. We broke our guns down. Then we did a little bit of shooting stance practice and just, figuring out how to get that gun up, from a low ready position. Talked about slings, talked about, 1, 2, 3 point slings, what the pros and cons are of everything. And, one of the things I'm really glad that they brought up too is that, you're really going to set up your gun depending on what you're trying to do with it. Yeah. It's, if it's a home defense gun or if it's just a plinker or, you're doing special operations or anything like that. That's going to vary depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And I'm sure they brought it up, and it's something very important for you guys to know, listeners know, or at least understand that, you wouldn't really walk around outside with your handgun without a holster, right? You'd put it in a holster, not in your pocket or just in your hand. And the sling is the same way to your carbine or your rifle. You need to get a sling for your AR.
100%. And actually, Leroy said that. He goes, the sling is just as important as a holster is for your handgun.
Absolutely.
It's that important. You need to have one. We talked about lights a little bit too, where you can't really hold an AR and have a light at the same time unless you have it mounted on your AR.
But you can't do like the whole Harry's technique or anything with your AR.
Right. So it makes more sense just to have it on your gun. And then here's why, and that's what they talked about, is that it all depends on what you're trying to do. But if if you're trying to do this and you need it on your gun or whatever, here's the importance of it and here's why.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it was a 4-hour class. We spent the first, I think, 2 hours in the classroom learning about all the basics and everything like that. And then we went out to the range. And like I said, it was so busy. We had to shoot 2 at a time and shoot with sharing other people in the range. Usually we get one of the ranges to ourselves. We can go ahead of the line and do a bunch of drills and maneuvers and shoot from multiple stages. But we had to kind of compromise with the crowd there, but it was still a great experience because we each got like individual attention. And you can really tell that Leroy and John both love to train and give lessons and make people shoot better because, they're able to just look over your shoulder and see how you can improve very quickly.
That's awesome.
And one of the things actually that surprised me too, that they brought up a couple of times was that, shooting an AR at least is very, very similar to shooting a pistol. The mechanics are somewhat similar. The trigger press that you want to have is the same. The grip that you have on the firearm is the same. And it was actually made pretty evident to me because John brought back my target after shooting 5 or 10 rounds. He goes, "You see this flyer on the left? You were slapping the trigger." And I go, "Well, I do that on pistols occasionally too." And it just kind of clicked in my head that you just have to think about it the exact same way and approach it the same way, and you'll start to shoot better.
Yeah, that's so much. Like I said, I'm jealous. I wish I could have come out and hang out with you.
Yeah, it was fun. And, being able to engage and disengage the safety as you come up. Leroy said, that's one of the most important things you can do is an up drill and just, calling up and not even shoot if you don't want to, or if you don't have to. Maybe you're at home just practicing. But when you bring that gun from a low ready to a high ready, flicking that safety off, was you can ingrain that into your head pretty quick as part of the movement, just like with a holster draw, moving your hand up to your chest or out of the way for a holster draw. It's kind of the same thing.
That's awesome. So did they go through like mechanical offset and stuff like that with your sights, like understanding that the closer the target is, your sight picture and your impact are not going to be in the same place?
Yeah, we did talk about that too, especially because I think all of us were running red dots, and I had my Vortex, what's it called? AMG UH-1, the Huey.
Oh, did you got one of those?
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, I put that on there, and it actually ran really well, but they were talking about how you have to adjust it, adjust your shooting depending on how close you are, because, that bore is so much lower than where you're seeing. So you have to compensate for that. But once you get out farther to 25 yards or 50 yards or whatever, then that kind of, it kind of evens out. And they talked about ballistics a little bit more. That's one of the things I think with rifles and carbines and stuff that you have to consider more and you have to dive into a little bit more is ballistics and the ammunition that you're using and physics a little bit. Because they talked about how, you can have a rifle that's 0 to 25 and 300 yards, because of the trajectory of the bullet and the way that, your line of sight will actually, if you drew a straight line, would impact the trajectory, intersect the trajectory of the bullet twice, once at 25 yards and then once at 300 yards as it drops. And so, but being able to learn how to compensate for that when you're up close and doing kind of close quarters, within 10 to 15 yards is something you don't think about. You just, with a red dot, you point and you shoot. And with a handgun, I mean, it's the exact same thing. And it's, your sights are so close to the bore, it doesn't really matter. But with a rifle, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it is different. And that was the other thing I think, after because I've taken some carbine classes, and it is kind of an eye opener to realize that there are some significant differences. Even though there's still some similarities with handguns, but there's some important things to understand with carbines or long guns, whatever you want to call it, that you really should spend some time with a competent instructor to at least learn some technique.
Yeah, one of the things too for me was John corrected two things that really helped my game a little bit. Was one, having the rifle, and you've talked about this too a little bit more, but not putting the rifle like on your shoulder. You kind of want to put it more in the crook of your shoulder, or like almost like onto your chest, like your pec muscle a little bit, and that'll get it closer. And then bring it actually up, bring the stock up higher than what you think you would, and bring the gun up to your eyesight rather than hunching and crinking your neck down. Because after shooting, I don't know, 100 yards or whatever, 100 rounds, and you're, forcing your neck down, your neck muscles and your shoulder muscles are going to get tired and sore pretty fast. And you can get some discomfort and pain there. So being able to bring that rifle up to your line of sight is a lot more comfortable and a lot easier.
Well, not only that, it's just like, I guess you just say it's comfortable. You don't get fatigue. Your ear pro doesn't want to get pushed off. Yeah, just do it the right way. Just bring it up. Don't be scared to just put the toe of your stock up high so you're not scrunching your head down. It's really not hard.
Yeah, and once you do it right and you shoot and you feel how comfortable and natural it is, you really don't want to go back. And it's something you have to learn. Like right before I started shooting again, like we went in kind of relays. And so when it was my turn to come up, I brought it in a little bit more, and I bring it up to where just like my initial would be. And then I'm like, okay, no, this feels weird. I need to push it closer to the center of my body and a little bit higher up. And that's what made it a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
And then, it was funny. John started talking about, the offhand grip and how he actually grips his pretty close to the magazine well, and to be able to maneuver that a little bit better, and it's a little more comfortable for him. And, I always thought, okay, you see these guys on YouTube or whatever, they reach out as far as they can and, really grip that gun, on the rails right by almost the front sight. And so that's how I had, a foregrip set up to where it was a little bit farther. And I didn't use a foregrip like just to grab the whole thing. It's kind of like you use the corner of it as like a reference point to grip it in the same place every time. But he goes, hey, just try this. And he takes my hand and puts it closer, to kind of not at the magwell, but a little bit closer. And he goes, here, just try shooting from here and seeing this is a little bit more comfortable. And it was a lot more balanced, and it was a lot better shooting, actually. And just small things like that, other people and competent people that are trainers will notice and help you adjust and help you try different things and see what the results are.
And don't be scared if you are taking a class to take that advice. Don't be too proud.
Oh yeah, that was the one thing that for me I think was helpful was, like I said, I know a fair bit about handguns and I know how ARs run and how to take them apart and put them back together, but I hadn't done a whole heck of a lot of shooting with an AR before. And so I was open to say, okay, here's what is natural to me and what makes sense. How do I improve upon that?
Awesome.
And then, we got to learn how to zero optics as well, because my red dot was not zeroed for the distances we were shooting, and not even zeroed for that rifle. So John was able to help with that, and it was interesting because I thought, you see some people zeroing a gun, and sometimes it's a very fine, small movement. Maybe you do one or two clicks or whatever. John was doing like 6, 7, 8 clicks at a time on this vortex, and I'm like, so is that normal that like most of the time that if they're not zeroed, after you pull them out of the box, that they need to be adjusted that much? And he goes, yeah, usually it just depends on the gun, and sometimes they have to be adjusted a ton. So, but we got it dialed in, and it was cool to see. We shot 2 or 3 shots, and then you bring it in. Okay, dial it down a little bit more. Okay, now just aim for this and shoot. And you can see, as the optic gets closer to zero, the rounds creep down right where you want them.
where they're supposed to be.
So that was pretty cool to see. And now I know how to do that. I feel like with any kind of optic, it's a pretty simple procedure. But I think I was a little intimidated to do it by myself because I didn't know how good my shooting was. Not to say that I was a good shot. I can put the holes where I want them at 25 yards, but for the most part. But if it's way off, you can at least say, okay, maybe some of it's the optic, and make some adjustments and see if that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you feel comfortable enough now to your next AR that you can do all those steps again without any help?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Nice.
I would feel pretty confident taking it out there or even taking that optic and putting on another AR and zeroing it for that way, or getting a new optic. I think I can do that. And I think having the basics, and that's what the cool thing about and it was funny. The cool thing about the AR platform is that you can, it's so ubiquitous that you can take anybody else's AR and run it pretty close to your own, at least with the manual of arms. But it got me thinking, okay, now I want to build another one, for whatever purpose. And maybe I can take and swap out parts from a couple that I have now and recycle those and use the little scope I have on a different one and this, that, and it's just, and that's the thing about ARs. Once you get into it a little bit more, you can fall down that rabbit hole pretty fast.
Very quickly. I may or may not have been there. So what?
Oh yeah.
What you're saying is it's time for you to build an AR pistol. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, it's time for me to build another AR pistol.
Oh, you're already rocking one? Did I already know that?
I've got two.
Holy cow! Where have I been?
Yeah, man. I've got it's like a Colt 633 kind of looking clone.
Yeah.
So it's got an 11.5-inch barrel with the old car, style handguards, and it's got a pistol brace on it, and it's got a detachable carry handle. And then the other one is a little more Gucci. It's that's what the Huey was initially on, but that thing was a little too kind of bulky for that. It was an 11.5-inch as well, but it's got some nicer parts on it, and I need to find a new red dot for that now.
Yeah. Well, I know a guy.
So. You know a guy?
I know a place you can buy.
Speaking of optics,
I know a place you can buy lots of optics.
Yeah, speaking of optics, we'll switch gears to that because we've got some big news, don't we, Steve?
I guess it's big news. Sure. What was the news? I can't remember.
You're the big news.
I'm fat. I'm big that way. No, I recently got accepted, I guess would be the way to put it, for the Ride-On Optics Pro staff. So. Yeah. Now I get to talk about scopes a little bit more for them, and excuse me, just burped a little bit with my ginger beer. Sorry. And
it's good radio.
Yeah, it's great radio, and I get to hang out with events and stuff with the Ride-On crew, so it's pretty exciting. And if you guys are looking, this isn't really a spot for Ride-On, but if you're looking for optics, you can jump on their website at rideon.com, and if you're really interested, you can use my promo code and get 15% off of said optics from their website, or anything off their website.
Really? Well, what is your promo code?
So it's the capital S and then Zimmerman, Zimmerman. He forgot the second N, but that's okay.
That's okay. Everybody else probably would too.
Yeah. So S Zimmerman, that'll get you 15% off anything off their website. So,
man, that's great.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
And it's interesting because optics are obviously a big part of, the gun. And there's so many different optics depending on what you're trying to use or what you're trying to do that, you might want to pick one over the other, So on this AR actually that I brought to the class, I took a low power variable optics scope off of it and put the Huey on because I knew we were going to be indoors and a little bit closer, and I didn't want to fiddle around with a scope or anything like that. Even though it has a pretty good 1x view on it,
right?
I figured I might as well just go for, again, see how this red dot works instead. So,
and running a red dot compared to a magnified optic is two different animals. You don't close both eyes when you're rocking a red dot on a AR pistol or AR in general or your handgun or whatever. You got to keep both eyes open. And whereas magnifying optic, you're obviously going to close your non-dominant eye, I guess is a way to put it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to. And yeah, with a red dot or holographic reticle, which I guess is technically what the Huey is, but you can just call them red dots for the sake of it. But you hold both eyes open and have both eyes open. You can see pretty clearly where the target is and what you're looking at. So
unless you have astigmatism, that's a whole nother animal.
Which is actually one of the reasons I got the Huey over any of the EOTechs, is because I do have astigmatism.
Oh, do you? And you're able to see through that Huey?
And I can see through it just fine. Yeah, and it's really interesting because, all of those holographic sights are actually fuzzy anyway if you're focusing on the actual reticle. Uh-huh. But then once you focus on the target, you really don't see any fuzziness on the reticle anymore. And I mean, you're really not looking at the sight anyway. You're just putting the reticle, that is, you're just putting the dot where you want the target to go, and you're not even thinking about the reticle. So
yeah, it makes life so much easier. I remember the first time I put a red dot on one of my ARs, and it was like an aha moment. It was nice.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's just, you don't overthink it. And even that's what they said is, Leroy and John both said, just put the dot where you want it to go. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Don't overcomplicate it.
So, but yeah, Right On is, we talked with Justin of Right On during the expo earlier in the year. And
we'll have Justin on some more. We're talking to him about doing some other really cool stuff with Right On that hopefully works out, and it will work out. It'll work out for the show. And stay tuned for that. Maybe there'll be some Right-Ons coming to some of our listeners.
Could be, yeah. And tell me a little bit more about Right On. What kind of the optics are?
So right now they don't do anything handgun. Maybe that'll come down the pipeline. Man, I'm telling you, that ginger beer is good stuff.
Glad you're enjoying.
I have every podcast I try and drink one. It's a
good tradition.
It is a good tradition. Let me just pull up their website here just for a second. More great radio.
Well, they do. I mean, they do scopes, and obviously we talked about. I remember Justin talked about how the glass is quite good for the price.
They're affordable.
Very
glass.
Good for the price.
Let me pull this up. Yeah, a very affordable line of scopes. In fact, like their warranty, some of the other scope companies around, they'll have a lifetime warranty, right? But Right-On's is lifetime of the optic, and they will replace the scope, no matter the optic,
no matter what.
They'll just, you send it in, they'll replace it. Obviously, the only difference would be theft or intentional damage, that kind of
test.
thing. But other than that, they probably won't replace it that way, but they will take care of you no matter what. And it's an American company, veteran owned. It's a good company.
So check out the website. It's RITON, rightonoptics.com. And use Steve's promo code. You help him out and you'll help us out. And maybe in the future you might have a Right On from the Range Minded podcast. Who knows?
Yeah, they're running magnifiers. You can get binoculars. You can get long range optics, AR style optics. They're covering the gambit as best as they can right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you wouldn't think about building an AR without putting an optic on it. And I'm going to go ahead and say that in handguns, it's going that way pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when I was at the store this weekend helping sell, we were moving a lot of Glocks. Yeah, and most people were buying the MOS cut because that's just the direction. I mean, you look at any of the race guns coming out, they're all getting optics cuts on them now, because there is an optics division in USPSA. So why not?
Why not? And just like with an AR, it's the same principle. Just put the dot where you want the bullet to go, and there you go.
Tons of fun if you haven't done it.
Yeah, I actually haven't ran a pistol with a red dot. I need to get around to doing that, and then once I do, I'll probably end up having a pistol with a red dot on it, and then there you go.
Yeah, I have an MOS 17, and I had an extra little red dot lying around, so I threw it on there, and it's kind of fun. Yeah,
I bet. And do you think it makes you any faster shooting?
I think so. We'd thrown a can out. It was this last winter. We threw a soda can out in the snow, and I could just put the dot on the can and just go to town. And I think it's way fast.
Nice. Yeah, maybe we'll have to dive into that a little bit and maybe do an episode on that too. That would be fun.
Yeah, we should get Jim on where he shoots a lot of competitions, and I think he could give us some enlightenment there.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. And we want to, I told John and Leroy that we want to have them on the podcast together too. I think that would be cool. So, because there's some good folks to know.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. That'd be a fun episode, or it will be a fun episode.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, even if you've shot, maybe handguns and pistols your whole life, and maybe haven't really dived into the carbine or the rifle, way of things, give a basic AR-15 class a try. Even if you don't have one, you can come to the store and rent one and learn how it works before you get one. We offer the build class too. If you wanted to actually just dive in and build your own, you can do that too. And then you can take the one that you've built and put it into through the basic AR-15 class.
And I think honestly, that would probably be your best option, is to start with putting the gun together, and then schedule the basic AR class. And then you can spend some time with Leroy or John individually and really dial in some of those skills.
Yeah, and they love giving private instruction too. They were talking about that's one of their favorite things too, is giving private instruction and being able to tailor what they're teaching to that shooter's skill level and everything. But that, and then we've talked about this before. It's one of the fun things about the gun world is that if you or if you've kind of gone pretty far in one discipline or whatever, there's a whole bunch of other disciplines you can try. Like I said, I mean, I'd been shooting handguns for a while and gotten pretty decent at it. I'm not as good as you or Mikey or anybody else, but
well, I'm not amazing by any means, but I do enjoy spending some time behind a handgun.
Yeah, but being able to try something completely new kind of invigorated me a little bit more again. Brought some of that, first time excitement back from shooting for the first time, however many years ago that was. So
yeah, we talked about that in the very beginning, didn't we? About your journey. Yeah,
I shot when I was a kid a little bit with my dad. He had some guns, and we went out, very very rarely, but we did go out a few times. And then as I got older, I finally was able to get a FOID card in Illinois, because I think you have to be 21. And I think I got mine at 24, but I was always interested in guns. And then finally was able to get my own, and just kind of was self-taught for a long time till I came to Idaho and got involved with Independence. And I've probably learned more in the year and a half of being involved at Independence than I have, the previous 20.
Nice.
So
that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about, the training too, where not only you get a lot of knowledge and you learn how to shoot better, but you get more comfortable and you get more confidence with your firearms. And I think the more confident you are with them, the better you can run them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, I guess we'll close on that for now, unless you wanted to had any more questions for me.
Well, I don't think so. I'm not going to do the 5 questions on you. We'll wait for Leroy.
Yeah, we'll wait for Leroy and John. That'll be a good episode. So, stick around for that, and hopefully we'll get them on soon. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys, if you like what you're hearing, let us know. Jump on Facebook, or you can jump on Instagram too. What's our Facebook handle is what again, Mark? Go for it.
Range Minded Podcast. Yeah, you can search Range Minded Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. You'll find us there.
Oddly enough, huh?
Yeah, oddly enough. And we tried to make it easy for you. And then if you want to email us, you can do that too. podcast@iishooting.com. Make sure you send us a note there. And however you are listening to, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from, make sure you leave us a rating and some feedback. That helps us out a lot as well. So,
yeah, rate us as high as possible you can.
Yeah, 5 stars out of 5.
5 out of 5, even 6 if you can find the 6th one.
Yeah, extra points there. So, but thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.